About a year before the Invasion of Naboo, a conference was held on the planet Eriadu, the homeworld of Wilhelm Tarkin. The Galactic Republic and the Trade Federation were embroiled in a power struggle, and a diplomatic meeting was called to settle the prolonged issues. The free trade zones had become the home of the Federation. They abused the power afforded them in political loopholes to ensure that they and their partners were immune to paying taxes, but everyone else to pay heavy tolls. In attendance at this conference on Eriadu were the Trade Federation's leaders, including the Viceroy, Nute Gunray, and the Supreme Chancellor of the Republic, Finis Valorum. However, at the conference, an assassination plot took place, wherein the deaths of the Trade Federation delegation, save for Nute Gunray, was the result. The target had originally been Finis Valorum, but he was not killed. Nute Gunray took sole command of the Trade Federation, and Lot Dodd became the senator for the Federation in the Galactic Senate. In secrecy, these two, Gunray and Dodd, had the backing of Darth Sidious. Furthermore, Valorum attempted to investigate the Eriadu Conference, but had been blocked by Tarkin, an ally of Senator Palpatine. Despite this, Valorum managed to garner a small rise in popularity, and he managed to pass a taxation bill called Proposition 31814D, of which Senator Palpatine had been a vocal supporter of. This bill severely restricted corporations like the Trade Federation, and pushed them into a tight spot. The events surrounding the Trade Federation's invasion of Naboo and the event itself were orchestrated by Darth Sidious, known publicly at the time as Senator Sheev Palpatine. His goal had been to sow enough dissent and distrust in the Senate and the Galactic Republic so as to ensure his rise to the position of Chancellor of the Republic. In the year leading up to the invasion of Naboo, Palpatine analyzed the political climate of his home planet Naboo closely. He maintained this proximity through his close friend Quarsh Panaka, a captain in the planet's royal security forces. Through his relationship with Panaka, Palpatine monitored the planet's election process. In the year 32 BBY, several months before the Phantom Menace took place, Panaka had been serving as Padme Amidala Nabiri's bodyguard since she was a candidate in the election. Each candidate for the position of queen was given a bodyguard from the royal security forces, and Panaka happened to have been assigned to Padme. On the morning of the election, Palpatine calmed Panaka from Coruscant, inquiring about the results and asking if there was a projected winner. Despite being generally discouraged from speculation, Panaka revealed to Palpatine that the senator's hunch had been correct, and that Padme was indeed very likely to win the election to be the next queen of Naboo. This pleased Palpatine to hear, but his attention was quickly diverted as a new taxation bill had been brought to his attention, and he had to depart. In actuality, Palpatine had already seen this new taxation bill, but officially, this was the first time he'd actually looked at it. Palpatine voted against the bill for optics, as the bill itself would be a disaster for Naboo, but he had already drafted the next 3 iterations of this taxation bill to be presented to the Senate, to further manipulate and control the conversation surrounding the topic. These iterations would be proposed by others working for Palpatine. Meanwhile, Nute Gunray, Viceroy of the Trade Federation and ally of Darth Sidious, began to falter. Unaware of Darth Sidious's true identity as Sheev Palpatine, Senator of Naboo, Gunray reached out to Sidious in a state of worry and anxiety. Darth Sidious, wishing to avoid any connection between his two personas, retreated to the lower levels of Coruscant to have this discussion with Nute Gunray. Now, this conversation I'm about to present to you is in the book Queen's Peril, and admittedly the chapter seems unclear on where and how Sidious conversed with Nute Gunray. The text seems to imply that Sidious went in person to speak with Gunray, opting to use his physical presence to intimidate the Viceroy while they spoke in the lower levels of the planet. But the chapter also states that Sidious cut the connection at the end of their conversation, which implies that it was over hologram. So I assume that Palpatine just took a precaution, went to the lower levels of Coruscant as Sidious, and spoke with Gunray over hologram there rather than risking doing it at the Senate building or his office. Either way, in this conversation, Gunray was incredibly concerned about the recent actions in the Galactic Senate. He complained that the senator from Naboo had been their biggest obstacle. Ironically, this referred to Palpatine, Sidious himself. Sidious, however, had intentionally acted in opposition of the interests of the Federation and their plans, so as to better analyze the actions of certain senators in response to these taxation bills proposed in the Senate. Sidious was playing the long game, and he demanded that Gunray compose himself and use the Delcontrian faction in the Senate to introduce another bill that would be coming their way soon. Then, Sidious told Gunray that someone else would be in contact with the Federation very soon, and they ended the connection. Palpatine then reached out to his apprentice, Darth Maul. Additionally, very soon after, an order was placed at the droid factories on Geonosis, the soon-to-be invasion force. Darth Maul had waited in the shadows for a very long time, ready to enact Darth Sidious's plans for galactic domination and the eradication of the Jedi. In fact, 1 year prior, Maul had grown impatient and restless from his hatred of the Jedi and struck out on his own to hunt a Jedi for himself. Maul had stalked pairs of Jedi on the planet Coruscant frequently, waiting for the day that he could be allowed to kill them all. Palpatine discovered this and admonished him, then sent him on a quest to defend the Trade Federation from pirates. In doing so, Maul learned from the pirates of a Jedi Padawan captured by a criminal cartel. He succeeded in locating the lost Padawan, named Eldra Kaitis, and hunted her in accordance with the Sith tradition. This tradition in particular required a Sith to hunt and kill a Jedi, then to use the Kyber crystal from the fallen Jedi's lightsaber to create their own red-bladed lightsaber. Maul at this point already owned such a blade, as the secrecy necessitated by Sidious's plans meant that Darth Maul would receive his red lightsaber through a different means. This whole hunt on Maul's part was simply the product of impatience and anger. However, Sidious revealed to Maul afterwards, after Maul had killed the Padawan, that he himself had allowed Maul to learn of the Padawan's location. It had been a test from the Sith Master. Sidious asked Maul if he felt satisfied now, but Maul replied in the negative. He was not satisfied, he was only angrier. Sidious approved of this, and for the time being, Maul's bloodlust was sated. Back to the present, just before the invasion of Naboo, Maul stewed even further in his hatred. He resented the Jedi for what he felt was them never deeming him worthy enough to locate and induct him into the Jedi Order. He had begun to resent Sidious for manipulating the galaxy and keeping him in the dark until he was needed, and thus preoccupied himself with trivial tasks such as reassembling his double-bladed lightsaber with the Force. Meanwhile, Senator Palpatine took part in a meeting in Chancellor Valorum's office, alongside Senators Lot Dodd of the Trade Federation and Yarua, the Wookiee senator at the time. The topic of the meeting was once more the continued presentation of the taxation bills in the Senate. For months now, variations of the same bill had been proposed, and Chancellor Valorum grew tired of the discussion. In fact, Valorum despised senators that represented corporations like the Trade Federation, and was appalled that the taxation bill continued to plague the Senate, but he maintained his neutrality as best he could. Palpatine, however, feigned complete disgust for the Trade Federation, and the proposal of more taxes on mid-rim planets like Naboo. The original taxation bill in question that had been so hotly debated, Proposition 31-814D, enabled the taxation of free trade zones, and made it so that companies like the Trade Federation would lose profits because of this tax. The recent taxation bills that had been pushed through the Senate sought to lessen the restrictions of Proposition 31-814D for the Federation's sake, but had been rejected each time. Palpatine and Lot Dodd argued in Valorum's office until a chime indicated that the scheduled meeting time had reached its conclusion. As the senators departed, Palpatine and Valorum walked together to Palpatine's office. Valorum questioned if it was time to include a neutral third-party moderator for the perpetual taxation discussions, with Palpatine suggesting the Jedi but quickly dismissing the notion as an overstep of senatorial privilege. He was, however, open to the idea if the situation grew more dire. Chancellor Valorum was completely unaware that he was being played and manipulated, even going so far as to be glad that he had such a sensible ally in Senator Palpatine. Some time after, Palpatine noticed the success found by Queen Padme Amidala back on Naboo. She had recently hosted a summit, inviting other delegates and officials from surrounding planets in the Chamal sector, the area of space Naboo was located in. The summit had gone well enough that Palpatine calmed Captain Panaka, who informed the senator of the growing unification of the sector, which was quite the accomplishment considering that the previous Queen of Naboo had favored incredibly isolationist policies, thus cutting Naboo off from the rest of the sector. To Palpatine, this reunification was problematic and completely surprising. He did not expect this from Padme, and thus moved the timeline of his machinations up, bringing the planned invasion of Naboo that much closer to reality. Sidious called the Federation and told them to cease the training maneuvers of their droid army on Geonosis and prepare them directly for battle. Several days later, when the summit hosted by Queen Amidala on Naboo had ended, the Trade Federation arrived above the planet, demanding the Queen's signature for a new treaty that forced the planet's population into indentured servitude and allowed the Federation to recoup their profit losses thanks to the taxation bill Proposition 31814D. Padme reached out to Senator Palpatine, informing him of the situation. Palpatine once more feigned shock, claiming that he feared something like this would happen, and informed Padme that the Trade Federation was behind a conspiracy in the Senate to shift the taxes on trade routes, and that Naboo was right in the center. Due to the recent changes in political procedures and rulings, the Trade Federation's blockade over Naboo was technically perfectly legal. Palpatine then told Padme that he would go straight to the Chancellor with the news. After the conversation concluded and the hologram dissolved, Darth Sidious viewed an image of Naboo. Interestingly enough, the book Queen's Peril uses these words: "He wanted to make sure its legacy was never forgotten." The whole section of the chapter detailing Sidious's feelings regarding Naboo seemed to be in conflict in a way. He recognized the beauty of the planet, the good-natured people who lived there, the legacy he wanted it all to have, but there was a hatred he felt for it too. Sidious marveled at the image of Naboo, reached his hand out, and pinched the spot where Theed was located, as if he was crushing the city. His thoughts were then interrupted by a call from Chancellor Valorum, right on schedule according to Sidious. Valorum, having had several recent failures as Chancellor of the Republic, could not afford another scandal. From here, the movie The Phantom Menace begins. Jedis Qui-gon Jinn and Obi-Wan Kenobi approach Naboo, sent by Chancellor Valorum secretly as the neutral third-party moderators, but are thwarted by the Trade Federation after they board the Federation Lucrehulk-class ship used by Newt Gunray. The Federation contacted Sidious, fearing that the Jedi would force a settlement not in favor of the Federation. Sidious ordered Gunray to send his troops down to Naboo at once, beginning the invasion of the planet officially. Sidious then tells Gunray to have his troops kill the two Jedi, saying that the Chancellor should never have brought them into this. In reality, as far as I'm aware, Palpatine had wanted Valorum to send the Jedi to Naboo so that they could fail in their endeavor and make the Chancellor look weak and ineffective. The Queen of Naboo would flee the planet, and all faith in Valorum would be lost. Despite the Jedi surviving, Sidious's plan continued as expected, and he had Maul as backup to dispatch the Jedi in case. In the meantime, Palpatine began looking through his personal storage of artwork so that he could begin planning how he'll decorate his new office once he becomes the next Chancellor. He was pretty confident at this point, and in fact, once the Queen managed to escape to Coruscant, she called for a vote of no confidence in Chancellor Valorum at Palpatine's suggestion, and Palpatine was soon chosen to replace him in another vote. Now, with his position as Chancellor secured, Palpatine had a few loose ends. The Trade Federation's invasion of Naboo required a positive outcome, and Maul was needed to dispatch the two Jedi during the fight. Palpatine/Sidious commanded Darth Maul to go to Naboo and prepare for the fight ahead. Maul was driven. He ignored the Federation representatives that received him on the planet, and immediately surveyed the Theed palace and city, scoping out the locale to determine where he wanted to duel the two Jedi ambassadors. Maul knew that with two of them, the Jedi would have the innate advantage in the fight, so he selected the hangar's power generation facilities as the arena, rationalizing that the catwalks allowed for Maul to divide them apart and chokehold the directions they attacked him from. He also tested the red force fields at the back of the facility, running through the hallway to time how long they stayed open for. He practiced fighting in the facility, getting an idea of how it would feel to fight in such quarters. As Maul analyzed the future battlegrounds, Gunray calmed him and informed the Sith Lord of the incoming Jedi, asking if they should hunt them or attack. Instead, Maul told the Viceroy to let the Jedi come to him. Maul, of course, would lose this fight. He managed to defeat Qui-gon, but lost to the Padawan Obi-Wan Kenobi. Maul was cut in half, fell down a hole, and disappeared for 10 years, assumed dead. Palpatine, meanwhile, enjoyed his success. His manipulations proved successful, and he attended the funeral of Qui-Gon on Naboo and the subsequent celebration of Naboo's victory over the Trade Federation. He also now recognized the potential of Anakin Skywalker in the Force, and set his sights on turning the new Jedi Padawan to the dark side to replace Maul. And this is something I actually wanted to address before ending this video, just a small observation. Darth Sidious was behind so much planning and manipulation. He really played the long game. Maul, meanwhile, was in total opposition to this behavior. Maul had little patience, constantly wishing to strike out against the Jedi despite the clandestine nature of the Sith at the time. I think it's an interesting comparison, especially when Maul finally does actually do some planning, preparing for the fight with the two Jedi in the power facility on Naboo, only to largely fail at this. I mean, one could say he succeeded because he removed Qui-Gon from the picture, thus making Sidious's job easier in twisting Anakin to the dark side. But for Maul specifically, he failed, despite all that planning for the fight. That should do it for this video. I believe that covers everything regarding Palpatine and Maul in the build-up to the invasion and during the invasion. If I forgot anything, please let me know. But as usual, thank you so much for watching the video. I hope you enjoyed it.